In this topic, we're going to talk about different aspects of the basics of commercial property insurance. Now first, let's talk about risk management. What are the risks that is being managed? Well, there are basically four types of loss exposures. There's this property loss exposure, liability loss exposure, personnel loss exposure, and net income loss exposure. Now, personnel loss exposure and net income loss exposure is very easy to verify. Basically, the persons who are working with you in your business, the losses towards them will be the personnel loss exposure. The net income loss exposure has something to do with your revenue and your cost. Basically, if your cost increase or if your revenue decrease, they will result as a net income loss exposure. Now let's go back and take a look at the property loss exposure and liability loss exposure. What's the difference between them? If you think about it, well, the major difference between the two is who is suffering the loss. For example, if you have lost your iPad, then it will be your property loss, right? Because you lost your property. However, if you by accident damage someone else's property, even though it is still regarded with property, it will become a liability loss exposure because that particular loss is incurred to someone else rather than yourself. In another word, if a particular loss is suffered by someone else and you are responsible for that loss, and that would become your liability loss exposure. Okay, so it does not really matter if there is a property occurred into that loss exposure, as long as it is your fault and someone else incurred in the loss, and that would be liability loss. The next thing we're going to talk about is the 6 steps towards risk management. Okay, the first step is identify. The second one is analyze. The third one is examine the feasibility of the risk management techniques. And then you're going to select the appropriate risk management techniques. After that, you're going to implement those selected risk management techniques. Finally, you have to re-evaluate the selected risk management program. Now, as you may have already noticed, these are not like 6 different aspects. They're actually steps, so you have to follow those steps one after another. If you take a look at the first 2 steps, they could actually be grouped together. So the first 2 steps are actually how you're going to understand the risk. Okay, you have to understand the risk before you can do something about it. Now, we call it a risk management to deal with the potential loss exposures, and they will be step 3, step 4, and step 5. Okay, together these 3 steps are utilizing the risk management techniques. After that, you always have to do a periodic re-evaluation of the risk management techniques that has been applied to your business. So in particular, what are the risk management techniques? There are basically 2 types of risk management techniques. There is this risk control and risk financing. So here is a question for you. If you think of insurance, is it a type of risk control or a type of risk financing? Well, the answer is insurance is actually risk financing, because by purchasing insurance, you actually did not change the likelihood of the loss being happened. You simply has transferred the financial responsibility to someone else, and that someone is insurance company basically. So again, insurance is actually a type of risk financing technique, and it is not risk control technique. However, sometimes if you purchase insurance company will send someone to your site to help for the risk control. For example, if you are covering your building, okay, if you have a business inside a building and you're covering that building, the chances are insurance company will send someone to the specific site to evaluate the building, including how is the sprinkler system installed and whether there is a smoke detector, etc., etc. So for those stuff, actually, insurance company are performing something as risk control. But essentially, insurance is still risk financing, even though they may provide some services to help you to control the risk. So what are the specific risk control methods? The first one would be avoidance. For example, do not build your house in a flood-prone zone. By doing that, you simply have avoid the risk of being flooded. The other one is loss prevention. If you're living in a house that is made of wood versus that is made of concrete, of course, the house that is made of concrete is less likely to get burned down, totally burned down. So by making your house in concrete, you are preventing the loss from getting fired. Loss reduction. If you talk about the fire peril, you can reduce the loss by putting in some sprinkler system in your building, so that even though there's a fire breakout, the loss result from the fire will be tremendously reduced by the sprinkler system. Separation and duplication and diversification will not only work for the physical assets, but can sometimes also work for the intangible assets. Now, why are risk control that important? What are the purpose of it? Well, it will break the link of chain events because of the causal relationship of those chain events. Loss will eventually happen. By breaking the link between them, risk control basically has the purpose to stop loss. Also, it can provide some valuable property protection. It can reduce uncertainty, and it can help your organization to meet its risk management objectives. Now, the topic of this class is commercial insurance. So what are the typical commercial policy formats? There is multi-line policy versus monoline policies, standard form versus non-standard form, commercial package policy, business owner policy, and output policy. Now first, let's take a look at the multi-line policy and monoline policy. Now basically, multi-line policy covers multiple lines of business. For example, if you purchase fire insurance coverage for your building, and at the same time, if you purchase liability coverage for the building, and the building that is covered will be under a multi-line policy. A monoline policy basically will cover only a specific peril. So most organizations usually are insured under a multi-line policy, and at the same time, they may purchase some monoline policies as add-up. The other thing is commercial package policy. Now, one thing that you need to know is the commercial package policy is the multi-line policy, so it covers more than one lines of business. And also, the other thing that you need to know is the commercial package policy under ISO's Commercial Lines Manual has to cover the following two parts: the building and business personal property and commercial general liability. In another word, in order for a policy to be identified as a commercial package policy, it has to provide at least these two lines of business. So in your exam, you may have a question like, is commercial package policy a multi-line or a monoline policy? Then the answer will be it's a multi-line policy. Another type of question will be, in order for a policy to be a commercial package policy, what are the requirements? Your answer will be, well, it has to include this building business personal property as well as commercial general liability. One thing that you also want to know is ISO. The full spelling of ISO is Insurance Service Office. It provides the guidelines of the policy format. The other type of policy is a business owner policy. Again, there are two things that you need to know about this policy. First of all, it is a multi-line policy. So what does that tell you? Well, it covers more than one lines of business. And the other thing you need to know is it actually is customized for small and mid-sized businesses. The coverage that is typically provided in a business owner's policy include the building and business personal property coverage, business income and extra expense coverage, and the equivalent of commercial general liability coverage. Now we are going to investigate these coverages in the later chapters of this semester. The next thing we're going to talk about is an output policy. Now the specific unique property about output policy is, first, it is a multi-line policy. But the biggest difference between an output policy and a regular multi-line policy will be the regular multi-line policy provides different kinds of coverages through different policies. In another word, the multi-line policies provide coverage using multiple policies. However, the output policy uses one single insurance policy to coverage different lines of business. So that is one very important differences between output policy and some regular commercial policies. So here is it. How is output policy differ from commercial package policy? Well, first of all, the output policy combines all or most of the commercial package policies in one single policy form. And the other important thing is the output policy often provide property coverage enhancements that are not contained in some standard forms used in the commercial policies. The next thing we're going to talk about is the conditions. Now, for any type of insurance policy, either it's a life insurance or an auto insurance or a commercial insurance, there are some conditions. So, in particular, for the commercial policy, there are 6 conditions. First, there's cancellation, and second, how can you change the provision of the insurance policy, and what are the rights that the insurance company can inspect your books and records, and the inspections and surveys, premiums, and transfer of rights and duties under this policy. Now we're going to talk about these conditions one after another. First, cancellations. how can a policy be canceled? Now, for the first thing you need to know is, you as an insured, you can cancel the policy on your side, okay? And for the insurance company, they also have the right to cancel the policy. So by either side of the party, if you want to cancel or the insurance company want to cancel the policy, well, then you have to mail or deliver written notice of cancellation to the other side of the party. Now, what makes a difference is the waiting period. If the insured cancel the policy, then you can cancel the policy anytime you want, and at the time that the insurance company receives the letter of cancellation, your policy will be canceled. However, if your policy is canceled on the insurance company side, then there will be some waiting periods to it. So if it is a cancellation due to a non-payment of premium, then there will be a waiting period of 10 days before the policy expires. If it is from some other reasons, then there will be 30 days. Now, the reason why there is a shorter time limit for a cancellation if it is due to non-payment of premium is basically because that particular cancellation, even though it's initiated from insurance company side, is actually due to the behavior of the insured side, because the insured basically hasn't paid any premium. And that is why the waiting period for non-payment of premium is shorter. And another question will be, why is there waiting period if it is canceled from the insurance company side rather than from the insured side? Well, the answer is, in many of the cases, the insured are required to carry an insurance by law. For example, if you drive, then in the state of Kentucky, it is required that you carried a valid automobile insurance. Now, it's required by law. If the insurance company decide to cancel your policy, all of a sudden you got uncovered, and due to that uncoverage, it will be illegal for you to drive. And that is why insurance company usually gives the insured some waiting period before the policy actually expire. Now, sometimes for a particular policy, there will be more than one person listed as insured. Now, who will have the right to cancel the policy? If there is two persons that is listed, only the first person will have the right to cancel the policy, and only that person will have the right to receive insurance company's cancellation. So for example, if there is this person A, person B, both are listed, however person A is listed first, then only person A will have the right to cancel the policy. And at the same time, if the insurance company decides to cancel the policy, then the insurance company will only need to write a written notice to this person A. Examining of books and records are extremely important. Basically, the examining of books and records will avoid the moral hazard, and also it will avoid some policy fraud. Now, for how long the insurance company can examine the business's books and records? During the policy limit, the insurance company can always examine the books and records. Even though the policy has terminated, insurance company can still have 3 years after that to examine the books and records, because sometimes the laws are settled after the policy expires. In those cases, if the insurance company do not have the right to do their inspection, then insurance company will be losing a lot of money, not making profit, because they simply do not have the right to do it. So for that purpose, the insurance company have the right to examine the books and records, even after 3 years that the policy is terminated. The other thing we're going to talk about is the transfer of rights and duties. So what are the circumstances you might want to transfer the rights and duties? For example, some businesses are family owned, right? When one family member becomes a senior citizen, he may feel that he is no longer with the physical capability of doing the business. Then he or she may decide to pass this business down to his grandkids or his sons and daughters. In those cases, the business owner's name will be changed, right, from that grandfather to the granddaughter or grandson. In those cases, if that business is covered under some particular insurance, then the insured listed in that insurance policy will have to be transferred to that grandkids. Okay? And how can an insured transfer the rights and duties? Well, the insurance company need to receive a written consent. And also, if someone dies, the insured's rights and duties under the policy will be transferred to the insured's legal representative or the person with proper temporary custody of the insured property. Now the next thing we're going to talk about are the conditions. Those conditions can either limit or expand the coverage, or it can determine how a loss payment will be calculated, or it can place requirements on all the parties to the insurance contract. So as you think of it, it does not only limit the behavior of the insured, it also poses limitations to the insurance companies. So here are all the conditions that you may find in a commercial property insurance. Now, I am not going to read through it, but you should take a moment to take a look at those conditions. So we're going to talk about some of them, but not all of them. The first thing we're going to talk about is an insurance under 2 or more coverages. Chances are, sometimes one item can be insured by 2 different policies. For example, if you go ahead and rent a car, if your own car is covered by physical damage, then your rental car should also be automatically covered. Now, if you also purchase physical damage insurance through the car rental company, then basically that particular car that is rented to you have 2 coverages. One is from your insurance company and one is from the rental insurance company. In those cases, if there is a property loss, the insurance companies will only pay up to the limit of the actual cost. And actually, that complies with the insurance principle of indemnity. So your compensation cannot exceed your actual loss. Another thing is liberalization. So liberalization may broaden the coverage for the insured if an insurance company during the insurance period or up to 45 days before the insurance inception adopt any policy revisions that may broaden the coverage without an additional premium. Now, here are some particular things that you might want to notice. The first thing is, it is a broaden of coverage, okay? So in the exam, if it tells you, well, liberalization, under the liberalization clause, insurance company can limit the coverage, then it would not be true, okay? So it only works for broaden of coverage. And the second thing you need to know is, it has to happen during the policy period, or up to 45 days before the policy inception. Okay, so there is a time limit to it. The third thing you need to know is without additional premium. If an insurance go ahead and say, well, I can broaden your coverage but with additional premium, in that case, it does not comply with that liberalization conditions. Okay, under the liberalization condition, the insurer's benefit will be automatically broadened for that particular coverage. If there is a loss, there are particular duties that the insured will need to perform. There is this notice of loss, policy report, protection of property against further loss, inventory inspection, proof of loss, and examination under oath. Okay, so the first thing, notice of loss and police report. The notice of loss basically will prevent moral hazard, and so does the policy report. Now, people are less likely to make a fraudulent policy report, but they are more likely to make a fraudulent insurance claim. So involving the policy report will deter some people from making fraudulent insurance claim. And the protection of property against further loss basically will limit the loss of the insurance company, well, of the insured. And since it is going to be paid by insurance company, the insurance company will like the insured to perform such duties. Inventory and inspection. Now, as we said, after the loss, it might take insurance company some period of time to settle the loss. Now, for that particular time period, if insurance company do not have any access to your inventory, or if they cannot inspect your inventory, they can never be able to evaluate true loss. The proof of loss and examination under oath will also help to prevent moral hazard. The final thing we're going to talk about under this topic is the specific details of insurer's duties in the events of loss, the police report. Now, if the law is broken, for example, if someone steals your car, that will be a theft, right? In those cases, if you want to have your insurance company to pay for that loss, you need to file a police report. And as we said, by doing that, insurance companies simply prevent some moral hazard problem. An inventory inspection. The insured must allow the insured to inspect the property and examine the records documenting the loss. Now, a complete inventory of the damaged and undamaged goods will help the insurance company to evaluate the loss accurately. Proof of loss. The insured may require the insured to sign a sworn proof of the loss containing information that is required by the insured to help prevent the moral hazard problem. Now, here we end topic 1.